Here's the idea. People telling the stories that made them who they are today. Their secret backstory. When people hear someone else's story, it gives them the faith that things can work out for them as well. My name is Mark St. Jean. The podcast is called Secret Backstory.
Gave the guys a little pep talk this morning. Let's see if it paid off. Straight ahead. I said better pilots. I need you to be better pilots, not pirates.
Sorry.
Thank you for coming to Secret Backstory. Ladies and gentlemen, today we have the owner of Eagle East Aviation in North Andover, Mass., Mr. Tim Campbell.
Hello.
Thank you for coming on, Tim.
You're welcome.
So you're an interesting guy. I flew with you on my birthday. My girlfriend bought me a flight up the coast for my birthday, and I got to meet you that day. And you had lots of stories, so I thought it would be you would be a good guest to have on.
Right. Yeah.
And like I was saying, the idea of the show is, we don't know people other than what we meet right there. And we're outside today, so this is either going to be podcast genius or podcast disaster. We got planes behind us, beautiful Lawrence Airport behind us. And so, we want to get to know these people and, how do they get there? So when did you start this business?
Realistically, 1988, I found myself unemployed, and long story. It's always a long story.
Right.
But I had worked here at the airport as in my late teens, early 20s for a company that was down the road here, and I was being groomed to take over, I believe. But he also had a son that was about 3 years younger than me that would always say, someday you're going to be working for me.
Really?
And I said, no, I'm not. So I made a big mistake, which turned into a positive, where I bought into a company that was actually in this building here, my hangar now.
Yep.
I was warned against it, but I was, you're young, and I had an opportunity, I felt, to work for myself. I bought 30% of a flight school that was in this hangar, and not realizing that they were right on death's door financially, and so I quickly lost $14,000 in investment as they went out of business shortly thereafter, and found myself without a job, and realized I could do this, and we just started plugging away.
Right.
And I bought the building in 1993, the hangar here, and that gives you longevity at the airport, where as a leaseholder with the city, as opposed to just a subtenant. So,
it's city-owned here.
Yeah, the airport is owned by the city of Lawrence. It's located in the town of North Andover. Kind of a funky match where the town's great. They get along great now. There's been a lot of interaction over the years, but a lot of people don't understand that the town is actually not even physically in the city of Lawrence, but it's owned by the city of Lawrence.
Oh, wow.
And we pay taxes to the town of North Andover, and we pay the lease to the city of Lawrence.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. So you bought it as a flight school. That was your goal.
Yeah, there was really nothing here. This hangar was empty. There was no fuel or anything. So, yeah, the idea was what's called an FBO. An FBO is a fixed base operator in aviation. It goes back to the old barnstorming days where the airplanes would just land in Farmer Brown's field and have to look for fuel and services and all that. Whereas then they started having fixed bases around the country for the U.S. Airmail, et cetera. And so we're an FBO. And think of it as that people can relate to boats a little better, because a lot of people have boats. Think of it as a marina for airplanes. Whereas we have slips back here. You can see people tie down their airplanes, which would be like a slip for a boat.
Right.
We do hangar storage, fuel, maintenance. We teach you how to fly them. Then we like we did for you, we take you for rides around the coast, which is kind of cool.
It's awesome. If you've never done it, you definitely want to do this. We went all the way up to Northampton and turned around and came back, and the cool thing for me was landing in the Newburyport or the Plum Island Airport
Right.
on the grass field strip, which I, always sat at. That's one of
Right.
my destinations on my bike.
Right.
I'll go down there, I'll sit, I'll watch the planes take off and stuff, and especially when the little model planes are there.
Right.
And go down to Bob Lobster and grab a sandwich. And it's an awesome place. And you did that for us. You landed there, took off from there, and that was really cool.
Do you remember the Sportsman's Club that was down there? It might predate you being around here, but when I was a young man in college, I didn't have any money, like nobody in college does.
Right.
But I could fly, and so I'd ask some cutie to see if she wanted to fly out to dinner, but I didn't have enough money to fly all the way to Martha's Vineyard or
Right.
Hyannis. So I'd take off out of Lawrence, go about 1,000 feet, land on the grass down there, and the Sportsman's Lodge was right at the end of the runway. You could taxi the airplane right up to the Plum Island Turnpike.
Okay.
So I put 2 tents on the hob, so it cost me like $8
Right.
at that time to go out to dinner, which was kind of cool.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And definitely, there's a bike taking off down the runway. That's cool. But definitely an impressive date to take someone out on a flight.
Yep.
I mean, taking them on a ride on a bike is one thing, right? When you get a plane, that's a whole nother game.
Right. Yeah, except for when the fog rolls in, and then all of a sudden you're like, and I wasn't instrument rated, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So you went to college. What was it? Was it a business degree that you went for?
Yeah, if we could scroll back a little bit, how I got into aviation itself is because, and I love the premise of the show, because it's like my kids. My kids really don't understand. They see how you are now.
Right.
And they think that's how it's always been.
Exactly.
They don't see the bloody knuckles. They don't see the 2 a.m. out here plowing snow and in a nor'easter in a 87 Dodge and they have the transmission go south on you, and you're pumping in a transmission out on the ramp here out in the snow.
Right.
You know, and they'll never see it. And so a lot of times people don't understand. And I get a lot of people that come in here and say, "Must be nice," and well,
right, you were just born into this.
Right,
this is the condition it was in when you got here.
Right. You saw my dad. I have the pleasure and the ability to bring my 91-year-old dad to work every day.
Right.
And they see him here, so they figure that I inherited it from him. And my dad was a freight handler. He used to lift refrigerators off of trains and put them on trucks. That's what he did. And not demeaning that at all, but
No.
I think people come in here and they see my dad and they say, "Geez, this kid had it easy." And not really.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm not singing the blues. It's just I think anybody who's been in business for themselves, especially a small business, there's a huge learning curve, and I made some massive mistakes, but you learn from them, you hope, and hopefully you reach a point in life where I'm 61 now, and I've learned to not take myself too seriously. I still take the business seriously, but I'm also, I have the ability to say, "Nice knowing you. We'll see you later."
Right.
So it's a good place to be.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you're definitely not taking yourself too seriously. I mean, I follow you on Facebook. I'm friends with you on Facebook. And you even get your dad into the thing. There was a winter one where he was bumper skiing.
Yeah, dragging my 91-year-old dad off the back of the
awesome.
truck.
Yeah, I mean, I sit there laughing at your videos. That's awesome. And so, yeah, I mean, you started and you built it up, and nobody sees that real part.
No.
But one of the things that I remember from the flight with you is you started talking about your childhood, and that you were a troublemaker. Basically, you got yourself into some trouble. You definitely a high energy kind of guy.
Yeah, me and my buddies. It was like the perfect storm.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you were tearing it up on bikes and stuff when you were a kid.
We tearing it up on anything we could get our hands on, but like I said, it was a perfect storm of people where we just all meshed, but nothing bad. It's not like we were doing anything. We weren't. If anybody got hurt, it was a fair fight, that type of stuff. But
right.
we just had high energy. But we later on in life, all of my buddies parlayed that energy into being constructive and productive citizens. They all own their own businesses. They've all done well.
Right.
They've raised nice families, and so I wouldn't change my childhood for anything. I I wouldn't change it for the world. So.
Would you say the local police were familiar
we were well
with
known.
you?
Yeah. Our nickname was the Wild Bunch.
Okay.
So if you talk to any old timer and ask about the Wild Bunch, that was us. And again, it wasn't anything. We weren't breaking into people's houses. We weren't holding people up. It was just, you jump on you'd be sitting in traffic, and there'd be a Winnebago in front of you in traffic, with a ladder on the back, and say, "I'm going to ride on the roof of that thing to the beach."
Nice.
And we would.
Right. It's just good times.
Yeah.
Not that we're encouraging this for any children who may be listening.
At home.
But it's character building stuff. I did some wild stuff when I was young.
Sure.
I had friends with motorcycles, and we tore stuff up. And I got brought home by the cops more than once.
Oh yeah.
And I never sat in a cell back then. But back then, they brought you home. That was the thing.
Right.
If they brought you home and spoke to your dad or your mom, you were in a lot more trouble than you'd be in if they took you to the holding cell and left you in there for a couple hours. So.
Oh, if you go into the office right in there, right in that room there's a front page of the Eagle Tribune. I'm on it with Dave Rand, who was a police officer in North Andover back in the day, and we did a fundraiser for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial in town. He came to me, asked me to help raise money, and we donate. All my buddies will donate their airplanes and their time, and we give 10, 20 cent a pound airplane rides. But the backstory on Dave is same thing. I was ripping it up on my Hadaka Combat Wombat, and the chase was on with him, and he had gone to high school with my mom, and he just broke off the chase because he knew I was going to hurt myself. Just went to the house and said, Sheila, when Timmy comes home, can you send him up to the station?
Right.
And went up there, and he had a whole list of fines for riding double on a permit, no helmet, sidewalk, wrong way, one-way violation, speeding, reckless driving. He says, I know your mother can't afford all these fines. I'm pretty sure you can't either. What do you think we should do? I said, I think we should sell that bike. And we became good buddies. And
that's good.
Yeah, he still comes by to this day to see me.
Right.
I'm good, Petros. Thank you. Yeah. So nothing terrible. We did wake up in what my dad called the Blue Light Hotel a few times.
Okay.
And my mother was a little different than my dad. My mom had that fighting Irish in her, and she would walk in the police station, and me and my two brothers would be all lined up. They only had 3 cells for males, and they'd have 1 for females. So somebody would have to be in the female cell, and my mother would just say loud enough so that we could hear. She'd say, if they get out of line, you have my permission to beat them.
Right.
And then we'd say, did Mom just say that?
That's old school.
That was old school. Yeah.
I mean, we grew up. I'm 57, so I'm not too far behind you. But we grew up in a time where we respected or feared, and you can probably go respected / feared our parents, the adults, and when another adult would speak to us, we would stop what we were doing and we would listen. And I think there was fear of, we had a stick in my house. It was like a ruler. My mother would say, I'll get the stick.
Joe Driscoll punched me right in the face. He was a Korean War veteran, and I got flipped in his kitchen. Right. And he laid me out. I went home, and my eye was split open, and my dad says, what happened? I said, Al Driscoll's father just laid me out. He says, well, what'd you do? So I told him what I did. He says, well, don't do that again. And that's where it went. So
right. It was a different time. Yeah. It was a different time for sure. Today it would be, just lawsuits and public opinions and all that stuff. So that childhood that you had, and then again, I think that's like a high energy, a need for high energy.
It was rock and roll.
Yeah, you were looking for that charge, and that kind of thing, drives people to do things like this. Right. Take on a business that is, kind of over and above, and not to knock a convenience store, but over and above like a convenience store. You know what I mean? Yeah. I'm in sales. I'm in HVAC sales, and something like this it seems incomprehensible to me to even start the process of taking it on. But living living the way you did, I think probably sets people up. And like you said, your friends are doing the same stuff. They have businesses going.
It was perfect for me in the sense, and we had spoken earlier off camera about one of the issues I did have was alcohol as a kid, and
Okay.
I was truly, by the time I reached 19, I was spinning my wheels, and I could see people passing me by,
Right.
and thankfully some people saw some potential in
Right.
me.
Right.
And I remember one of my managers at TJ Maxx said, what are you doing here? You got to get going. But I was busy having fun, and
What did you do at TJ Maxx?
I swept floors. I was
Did you really?
Yeah, I used to
Okay.
break up the cardboard boxes and look at the women shopping. But but it was embarrassing. That's where it started to hit home, where a lot of my friends were coming home from college and all that stuff, and
Right.
I'd be out there on TJ. I'd have that
Sweeping
big broom
your floor.
sweeping underneath the racks, and I'd hide the broom when they came in. But it took a few more years where I was working for a business here for a family, and they sold it shortly after I started, and I had the option to stay with them, go with them to their real business. This was a sideline business for them, or stay with the new owner. And I wasn't familiar with the new owner, so I decided to stay with them. And this was probably the best punch I ever threw. Was my boss at the time, the foreman, was a friend of mine my best friend's brother. And I don't know, he had a chip on his shoulder for me. And one night we were at a gig down the beach, and he offered his paycheck against my paycheck, one punch. And we each got one punch, and I didn't want to do it. I figured, this guy's my boss. I don't want to hit my boss, punch him in the
Right.
face. And my brother John was in the military at the time, and he was full of a little vinegar. And
Right.
he whispered in my ear, he says, now this goes back to 1980. He
Okay.
says, he makes about $800 a week. Hit him and hit him hard. I was making like $125.
Right.
So I nailed him, and then he came back, and the deal was one punch each, and he threw about 50. So it started at Donnybrook, and I don't know many people today that would do that, let someone punch them in the face. But
No.
those were different times, and
So what one? I mean, you put your paycheck up against his paycheck, and then
Yeah.
what? The guy who gets knocked
who was
out
still standing
gives
yeah.
his paycheck over.
Yeah, I knocked him over a wood stove. He left his feet. I didn't, and
Right.
so I won, but I never got the money, and I got fired. So I got fired, and I had nowhere to go. So I went back to the people that had just bought the business down the road, and
Right.
my boss at the time really taught me how to work. That my new boss, we used to go into whenever an airplane crashes. Generally, they don't crash in easy to get at places, and
Right.
they'd crash up in the woods up in Maine or up in northern Vermont, and we're the knuckleheads that would go in there with a old Chevy pickup truck and a flatbed trailer and have to get this airplane out of the woods, getting
Wow.
eaten by black flies. And
Right.
but it taught me. It taught me perseverance. When you're out there, you can't call 911, or you can't call, can't phone a friend. You're
You
in the
can't
woods by
ask
yourself.
anybody
and,
else, right.
Yeah, I got to get this 5,000-pound airplane out of this woods here, and I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes and bugs, and
Wow.
my boss doesn't care.
Right.
So he taught me a lot. He taught me to stick with it, and I came in hungover one time, and I overfilled an airplane. Fuel was all over the ramp, and he looked at me. He says, you have a decision to make here. Sit up and fly right. If you want to be around this stuff, you've got to have your head in the game, or you're going to get hurt.
Right.
And there's more to that story too, but we'll keep it simple. And
So is that where you decided to stop drinking, or?
Yep, right around there. I still had a few more in me.
Right.
And then I woke up one morning, July 11th, 1982, and I just went to everybody, and everybody that I had ticked off the night before, and there was lots of them. Wrecked a couple of cars and made my buddy AWOL for the military, and
Right.
shook everybody's hands and apologized, said I'm done.
Good for you.
And it's 40 years and 2 weeks now.
That
right?
is
So,
awesome.
Yeah.
And
so
you've had a good 40 years. I mean,
I have. Yeah.
you definitely enjoy life. you know, and I want to get into more stories. I want to talk about this bike ride you took over in Europe. If we can talk about that real quick.
Yeah, that's one of the coolest things. I taught an Irish guy how to fly, Eamon Fee, and we became fast friends. And he didn't know how to ride a motorcycle, so I taught him how to fly an airplane. And I figured I'll teach this guy how to ride a bike.
Right.
So he had ridden to Laconia. He just followed me up to Laconia. We rode down to Hampton Beach one time, and he ridden back and forth to his house in Winchester before we shipped our bikes to Ireland. And then we just shipped him over and flew over to Dublin and picked him up and started riding. And
that's amazing.
He crashed in RD, which is northwest of Dublin. Got up, he was all bloody, mirrors broken off, saddlebags bent up, directional's gone. And he gets up and he goes, "Well, I learned a lot. Let's go." So we rode around Ireland, and then the next year, we got my grandfather served with the 26th Yankee in World War I.
Yeah.
And they saw some pretty good combat, and I had his. I went down to the Veteran Services in Lawrence, and he had shipped out of Lawrence, and I got his battle, his complete list of the battles he was in, and his citations, and I thought, it's 2018, World War I ended 1918 in November, and so we took the bikes, we rode them down to Dublin, put it on a ferry, rode across Wales, rode across England, took the channel, popped out into France, which was like England, it was like winter, and then as soon as you popped into France, it was like summer. It was beautiful. Right. And then we just followed my grandfather's path, St. Catherine, St. Mihiel. Right. He fought the final battle in Argonne, and it was kind of cool to be standing exactly where my grandfather was standing 100 years before. Right. And I actually felt guilty because I know he was probably scared to death. Oh, yeah. And my biggest concern was, are we going to be able to find an Airbnb, And but it was pretty nifty, and I got a great respect for the French with that on that ride. Sure. And because I would show them, I had my grandfather's sergeant stripes and all his ribbons and medals, and I would show them, Grandpapa. Right. And they knew there, and I was treated differently, which was nice,
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet. That's an amazing bike ride. We'll let the plane go by.
Those airplanes.
It's like it's like Led Zeppelin physical graffiti. Let me get this plane out of here, Jimmy. No, I'll leave it. Yeah. So let's come back to today again, and you've got the business. It's rolling pretty good, and you have this this kind of reckless childhood thing you did, and and you've come out of it, you've changed it. And so today, you bring kids in that are, having some trouble. Maybe or maybe not. But, I mean, this is, and I'm getting this as secondhand information. I was told this about you. You didn't tell me this yourself. Right. That you bring kids in, you show them the ropes, teach them to fly. And you set them on a different course. What are some of the stories you have there?
Ooh, there's a ton.
I mean, how long have you been doing that?
Well, I think it's always been in my nature. My parents were they were involved in Alcoholics Anonymous, and so we were always helping people out. And I think I grew up around that. There would be somebody that was really, really down, and my parents didn't have much. They had 5 kids in the 70s, and like I said, my dad was a freight handler. There wasn't a lot of money coming in. Right. But they always had room at the end for somebody who was struggling. And my dad, he lived it. There's a lot of people who talk a good game. They could recite all the AA little slogans, live and let live, one day at a time, blah, blah, blah. My dad didn't talk it. He lived it. And he still does to this day. And I think I just absorbed it. And my mother would take in, back in the 60s and 70s, if a girl got pregnant, a lot of times they got tossed out of the house, and my mother would take these girls in, and so it taught us all a little bit of compassion. Okay. My brothers and my sisters we're like carbon copies. Right.
Yeah. You got empathy just ingrained into your life.
Yeah, and then we always realized that how lucky we were. Hey, Jackson, how lucky we were and I used to compare. When you're younger, a lot of times you see that, oh, geez, so and so, they've got mini bikes, they've got a built-in pool, they've got the whole family has membership at Cedardale, and you compare them to your parents, and you think your parents have failed you, you know.
Right,
and
right.
I went through a period of that, but then you sleep over these kids' houses sometimes, and you see what went on behind closed doors. And I'm not knocking anybody, but
Sure.
it was. You know, I always felt as soon as I crossed the threshold of my house, I was the safest human being on the planet, and that's
Right.
the way you should be. And when I speak at AA meetings, that's the story right there. Is I always felt that I was the safest human on the planet, and I just watched how my parents, who had nothing, were still willing to give something. My dad would have us. When they first came out with Merit cigarettes back in those days, they went out with coupons so you could get a free pack of butts.
Right.
And we went, and my father would have us take all those coupons and get a whole bunch of Merit cigarette packs, and we'd go into Boston on Saturdays, and we'd give them to the drunks, you know.
Oh, no kidding.
And he'd have you, you know, they'd always want money. He said, don't give money, you know, we'd buy them a cheeseburger, and you cut it in half.
Right.
He said, you can't give them too much, they'll get sick. So he taught us that way. And one time, a large Native American guy came at my father in Boston Common. Now, my father's got 5 kids behind him, like, make way for ducklings, and this huge Indian comes at my father, and I'm waiting for my father to deck him, and he just, instead of hitting me, he shook his hand, and he said, how are you? And my father was smart. He swung him around, all his 5 kids, and just sent him on his way. And I remember I was disappointed in my dad for not laying him out. Right? Because that's what you want to see as a kid. You want to see your dad.
Right. You want to see your dad be the hero, right?
But in hindsight, my father was the hero. You know, and he taught me, he says, never hurt another drunk. Never harm another drunk.
Right.
If you can at all, help it. And so I kind of lived that way, and he lives that way, and I saw it in action with him. He was protecting his family. He didn't harm a man who's obviously sick.
Right.
And it taught us a little bit.
Right.
Not right then and there, but, you know, as I replayed the story in my head, I said, this guy's a cool guy.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is the alcoholic.
Yeah.
Watching out for the other alcoholics.
Absolutely.
Helping them out through their day.
Right.
Because, you know, you can't change people unless they want to change, kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, he didn't enable them, but he would if you wanted to help yourself, my father would help you. We were always at AA meetings like this. We were little rugrats, they called us.
Right.
And back those days, you could smoke at the meetings, and we'd put out the ashtrays, we'd fold up the chairs, and but the problem with that is I felt that was bulletproof. Both my parents were in the program,
Right.
and so there was never any alcohol in the house. So when we had an opportunity to get it, we were like moths to the flame. And 2 out of the 3 brothers, my brother, he got into a gym with it too in the military, but he's squared away now.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, well, a lot of us, I had some issues in the military myself with alcohol. I got an Article 15 when I was in there, and because
you can relate to my dad. Then.
I can. I mean, I was in the reserves, but when I was out in basic and AIT, it was my birthday, and we went out one night, and you know, they teach you to low crawl when you're approaching the enemy. Well, I came back at like 4 a.m. And they were lining up outside to do calisthenics and stuff and do the morning run. And I was still in my civvies in the bushes, laying on the ground. I low crawled through the bushes to get into the door. I ended up getting caught because I smelled like a brewery in class. And so I got an Article 15, had to go to some alcohol classes and stuff. But, and, you know, I stopped drinking almost a year ago now, I guess. October 15th will be a year.
Yeah.
You know, April 1st last year, I had my last drink, I guess. I just, and it wasn't, there was no event. It was just something I decided to do. I just was tired of, you know, missing days. And, you know, being a musician and going out and playing gigs, and you drink while you're doing this, and then the next day is gone.
Yeah, you wasted day.
It's a wasted day.
And we don't have a lot left.
No, and that's, you know, I think that's the big thing for me was the wasted days, and so here I am, you know, not drinking, and I'm enjoying it, and I like, you know, being aware of what's happening as it's happening, but I want to talk about
the kids.
The kids, you know, I mean, this is the giving back thing, that, you know, you're putting just this good energy out into the world, and, you know, you may have put some negative energy out there when you were younger, and you know, you've done this and that, but what you're doing with the business is more than just, you're not just making money, you're actually giving to the community around you, which is great.
I've been very fortunate, and it's all what you make it, I guess. But I have been fortunate. You know, everything works. Yeah,
Right,
I have a brain in my head, and I love what I do, which not a lot of people can say that. And you know, I can bring the dog here, bring my dad to work, and a little. Scroll back a little bit, whereas part of the reason why, you know, the empathy comes from my folks. And then I don't know if you ever worked anywhere where you pull in and you see the boss's truck or a co-worker's truck or car, and you get a sick feeling in your stomach because you go, oh, here we go, you know.
Right.
Or you may have seen that in the service, you know, you get an officer that just, you don't click. And I thought when I started my own business, I never want anybody to get that feeling when they drive in and see my truck. Yeah, so we always try to make it, not that it's Shangri-La here, you know, there was some...
Work has to be done.
Yeah, there was some butt chewing going on yesterday and this morning, but I don't let it carry over. And we with the kids, getting back to the kids, is a lot of times we'll have parents who will come up to us. This woman came up to me and said, hey, listen, my husband and I are going through a divorce. My son is not taking it well. He's acting out. Do you have anything he can do here? He loves airplanes. And so I see it as a challenge, you know, whereas the kid's hurting. You know, his family, his world just blew up on him. A lot of times people, you know, the parents are busy worrying about themselves, how they're going to lose half their savings and how they're going to lose their house. They're going to lose this. They don't think of the kids. So we put them to work. And there's no holds barred here, where if you're a screw up, you're going to hear it. If you do something stupid, you're going to hear it. And nobody's going to powder your bum, and and a lot of these kids have never been barked at like that in their lives, and you know, I always tell them, you'll join the Marines just to get away from me, you know. And but it pays off, you know. This kid now is flying professionally, and his mother came up to me one time, and I never think anything of it because we're not asking anything special, we're just saying do your job. And but the kids strive for it. They come up here on Friday nights and they have cookouts, and there's no drugs or alcohol, and it's just airplanes. And you know, she came up to me and she grabbed me by the face and she says, "You saved my son's life." And I'm like, "No, I didn't. He saved his life."
Right. But, you gave him an opportunity, though.
Yeah, and that's it. Just knock him down if he gets out of line. If he gets back up, good man. You know, but we haven't lost many. You know, You can't win them all. We lost one kid who just didn't get the program, and but for the most part, we had this young girl here. This same thing. Parents were going through a divorce. Her brother had cerebral palsy and had passed away, and she was going through a hard time. And we did a school to careers from Methuen High School, and she's sitting on the couch in the office, not listening to a word I'm saying. So I looked at her. I says, "How about you? You want to work here?" I was talking about it, and she says, "I don't give a crap." Right? I said, "You're hired." That girl, right? And I won't say her name,
Of course.
But she just retired as a major in the U.S. Army.
Really?
She went from sitting there, could care less about anything, could care less about me, and she certainly didn't use the word crap.
Right.
And she did 3 tours overseas during in the Middle East. Wonderful, wonderful woman. And that's what she told me her first time back from Iraq. She said, "Do you know that the things I learned at Eagle," she says, "that's what got me through that." She says, "I know I can do this." Because we have the kids climb the I-beam here. You've probably seen those videos.
I've seen the pictures, yeah.
And just, not to be reckless, but it just gives the kids something that maybe they've never done anything in their life where people stand around and say, "Hey, nice job." But yeah, she retired as a major, and that's one of my proudest ones right there. And,
that's a huge success.
And a lot of the kids that come here, they were going to be successful no matter what. They had good backgrounds and all that, but there's been a few that really needed a hand, and this gives them, I always call it a refuge. You know, the river's my refuge at night on my boat. You know, I can go out and just float on my boat and read flying magazines, but this is also a refuge here for many people. This is a, you know, honestly, you come here at night, the best sunsets in the world, right?
I bet they're out.
Absolutely.
I've seen your pictures, yeah.
And you're around people, you become family. So it's good, you know, that the kids can see it as that.
That's awesome.
It's a place to go and they can just be themselves.
That's a great success story, and the whole confidence building courses they have in the military are climbing things.
Right.
Just the fact that you can do it. I remember when I got out of basic and AIT, I didn't go anywhere, but I remember when I would do something. Like the first time the drill sergeant dropped me for 25 push-ups, I had not done 25 push-ups yet, and I had a pack. You had to do 13 push-ups to get in. Right. That was like the passing thing, which I did barely. And I had a pack on my back, and he yelled at me and he dropped, give me 25, and I'm like, and I knocked him out like not even tired, and I stood up and I was like, whoa. I just did 25 push-ups with a pack on my back.
Right.
I was smiling. I wasn't even upset that he yelled at me. So there's something. Some of the people I respect most in my life yelled at me at some point. Not that yelling is a good thing, but sometimes it's a good motivator.
Right. I've had kids come back that I've actually fired from here, and they've come back and said, it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Right.
Because this job meant a lot to me. And a kid came back. He had moved to Florida, and he had his son with him, and we had actually traded blows, and he says, thank you, which was nice. It was good to see, and not that I'm saying that everybody, you don't walk around whacking people in the face, but it was nice that he came back and said, thank you very much for firing me.
Right, he got a lot out of it.
Yeah.
So let me ask you. Someone who's sitting at home right now listening to this, and they're not satisfied. They're a young kid, a boy or a girl. What is your advice to them? They have a dream. Everybody's got something they kind of long to do, but they don't think they can do it.
Yeah, well, I was the same way. I took a while to get my flying under control because I didn't have the confidence. Right. And that I think that's what a lot of the drinking and the brawling was, trying to build that confidence to try to test your mettle. But I didn't have the confidence. I didn't feel like, God, I might be able to get up in an airplane by myself and make all these decisions. These are all life and death decisions, and I don't know if I can do that. But then you just attack it, and like I always taught my kids, not to be cliche, but live life on life's terms. Right. And I think that's a problem we see now, and I don't want to get too far off the rails here, but we see a lot of kids coming in where they can't even get a medical to fly because the parents have them on all these medications.
Oh, right.
And I tell them that if all those medications were around when we were kids, we all would have been drugged up.
Right.
And it would just dampened our enthusiasm for life, and we carried that enthusiasm into business and working.
Right.
And my daughter one time slid into second base playing softball and snapped her ankle in half, and they tried to load her up on all these painkillers. I said, nay, 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 nay.
Right.
You're taking Tylenol and that's it. And not that I'm the worst parent in the world.
Right.
But I've just seen it happen. It rolls into a drug addiction.
Sure.
And same thing, we see kids that now we've raised a generation, and I'm not trying to be Mr. Negative here, but of problem identifiers. Mm-hmm. Not problem solvers.
Right.
Whereas my buddies and I, we'd be driving down the beach and the car would die. We'd be on the side of 495 ripping that car apart.
You'd fix it right on the side of the road.
Right on the spot.
Yes.
And getting bombed while you're doing it.
Right.
But now the kids will come up and say, that we need a new vacuum.
Right.
Well, why do we need a new vacuum? Well, it's not doing anything. I said, well, have you looked? Have you given it any shot?
Did you take it apart and see why it's not sucking?
And you see that there's a hairball the size of a small cat in the hose. So we try to beat that out of them. Whereas I tell them all the time, I know what the problem is.
Right.
I want to find a solution. That's your job.
Right.
And it gets them thinking. And if they can, stay off the meds and like I said, deal with life on life's terms. Whereas we got in a jam when we were kids, and we were going to court, and it was pretty serious because it was a good jam, and
I was actually hoping for planes taking off behind us, so this is okay.
Okay, yeah. We've anybody out there, you'll see a pilot. I didn't look because I don't want to turn on in front of the camera, but
Right.
any pilot worth his salt will always look at an airplane taking off, no matter what.
Right.
Whether he's got 15,000 hours or 15, he'll look at airplanes taking
Right.
off. And
Is that the pinnacle of the flying? Is it the takeoff?
I love landings. I love a landing that's challenging, like a nice nasty crosswind, or
Okay.
or going into new airports, like short airports. And
Right.
I always tell people, chimpanzee can fly an airplane,
Okay.
really, but it's when things go south, that's when you make your money.
The problem solving again.
Yeah, problem solving. Whereas when I had my first engine failure a while ago, I was in an airplane and I blew a cylinder off the airplane, and I'm flying along. I took off out of Mansfield Airport, and nothing like that ever happened to me before. And all of a sudden, it's just this rooster tail of smoke is coming out out the cowl, and it was weird because I just sat there for a second, just dumbfounded, saying, "That looks
Why is there
that looks
smoke?"
cool."
Oh,
It really did. It looked like a movie. I was like the Great Waldo Pepper, and then I realized you better get your act together, So. I brought it around and I landed downwind at Mansfield, and the cylinder had not cracked completely off, but it was just all the oil had left the crank.
Right.
The guy pulled up. He says, "Are you okay?" I said, "I always wanted to do that." And the guy looked at me. He says, "You always wanted to do that?" I said, "Yeah." I said, I always wanted to. Everybody wonders how they're going to react in combat, or how they're going to react in
in an emergency situation.
yeah, in an emergency
right?
situation. And I got it back on the ground without bending metal. And I got a lot of attaboys. But as a pilot, you go home and you lie in bed at night and you replay it and you say, stupid, stupid, stupid. I should have done this. I should have
Right.
done that.
Right.
I took off after I saw this airplane had always been a weeper. Weeper being oil on the ground.
Okay.
The weep was a little bigger this time, but I just blow it off. 'cause
This
it's a
is
weeper,
what it does.
So
right.
I'm like, stupid. And just little things like short final, I should have popped my door open, and I didn't do it. And so you replay it. And not the attaboys, because
Right.
if you just say, hey, I did a great job, and pat yourself on the back. But I try to learn from each one what I did wrong as opposed to right. Now, obviously, you do
Right.
something right because
Right.
I'm still here.
You're still talking about it, right?
Yeah. But there's a few things you say, why didn't I do that? Why didn't I do that? And so
Right.
hopefully I get better. So when I teach people, when I do emergency, engine outs and whatnot, they're to the ground.
Right.
Because I always tell everybody, when I was learning how to fly, they'd bring you down to 1,000 feet and say, you would have made it, or you would have been in the hospital. Hey, I want them to show that you need to get this. You earn your money from 500 feet to the surface.
Right.
Anybody can bring it down out of the, again, you could put a 3-year-old that controls, he'll come out of the sky reasonably well to about 500 feet.
Right.
And then at 500 feet, you have to be on your numbers.
You have to be making decisions, right?
Right, yeah, so.
So, I mean, some of the things we're learning just from this conversation, attack that dream, that thing you want to do, that thing you think you can't do that's beyond you. Just do it.
Oh, yeah.
Just take this whatever the first step is.
This whole business, I was scared to death. Whereas, it just, I went through a period where financially it was really hard. And I had a partner in the business who decided to take more than his half, shall we say. We'll just leave it at that, and left me in a pickle financially. And my biggest fear was, my kids think I walk on water. My 2 daughters are 28 and 30 now, and they still feel the same way about me, that
Right.
I am their protector, and I am the man. And
Pretty much the way you felt about your father.
right.
Yeah.
And my dad now feels that way about me. He wears all the Eagle-East gear. He's got my hats, my coats, my shirts, and he's so proud of me. And I thought, I cannot fail. I cannot fail.
You have generations on both ends.
that are looking for me,
right.
and they have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. And that was the motivator. I'm not going to fail in front of my dad. I'm not going to fail in front of my kids.
Right.
And so I guess my advice to anybody is, get that motivator, whether it's just you don't want to fail for yourself, or just keep showing up.
Right.
I don't know if you know how long you've been in the area, but there used to be Trombley bus lines.
Yeah.
They were around
Yeah,
forever.
I was born in Bradford.
Right,
So,
okay,
yeah.
so you know. So Frank Trombley was a friend of my grandfather's, and really respected. They had a great respect for each other. My grandfather was much older. Frank was a World War II guy. My grandfather was World War I, But when I first started in business, I was right out here on the ramp,
Mm-hmm.
and it was like one of those days where, you know, your nose would freeze together as soon as you went outside, and
Right.
customer comes in and wanted fuel and also wanted air in his tires too. So wind's howling about 30, and Frank is in there at the restaurant having breakfast, and he sees me crawling around on the ground in that weather out there, because you're trying to get the valve stem to line up with the wheel pants. You have to move the airplane about 50 times and out there, and just he's watching me, and I came in. I didn't complain and all that. He just said, "You're going to make it."
Yeah.
And to hear that from Frank Trombley, who for me was a god.
Right.
And
Big businessman.
Yeah,
Right.
he was a big businessman in town and a gentleman, like my granddad. And I knew I was okay. You know, when I got that was a big boost for me there. He said,
Sure.
"You're going to make it." And I was like, "Well,"
Yeah.
because at times you wonder if you are.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, it's true.
Yeah.
And you know, another thing you kind of talked about, that someone had said to me once. He's like, if you can identify the problem, you can fix the problem.
Right. Right.
And you know, you've said that in a couple different ways through this interview. So, you know, if you can tell me what the problem is, you should be able to figure out how to fix it.
Well,
you
that's
know?
that's the motto around here with the kids. You know, really is say, you know, you just have to be smarter than the thing you're working on.
Right. There you
Yeah.
go. Yeah.
Just be smarter than the thing you're working on. It's not that hard. And like I taught my kids, is this was made by a human right here.
Right.
So if you're a human, we should be able to figure it out.
Right.
We may need a little help, but we should be able to figure it out. And that's what we do. Just sit there and figure. And there's times where I've walked away from stuff and so start getting ticked. Go walk away, put a little PB blaster on there, and
Right.
come back the next day with a fresh brain, and
Right.
then it goes. So
That's
yeah.
it. How are we doing on time? I know you get a fly at 8.
Yeah, let's see here. If I knew how to use my phone. Yeah. Pretty close. That's my
okay.
student there. But yeah, it's
Okay.
8:05. So
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let me go ahead and thank you for being on the show. I super appreciate it. Eagle East Aviation in North Andover, Mass, at the Lawrence Airport. What are some of the services you offer here? Someone asked me if you guys did like transports to Nantucket.
no, we don't do that.
Okay.
That's what's called Part 135. That's an on-demand charter.
Okay.
We're busy enough just teaching people to fly and doing scenic rides that you can see all the airplanes getting ready to go now. That to me is.
And how far does the scenic ride thing go? I mean, we went up to Northampton or so. and
Yeah,
back,
we're
but-
restricted to 50 nautical miles from our home base.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So pretty much a swing with Cape Ann and some people like to go up, especially foliage season. They want to go up over New Hampshire, but I always say go to the seacoast because there's leaves down there. You get up over New Hampshire, it's just all leaves. It's beautiful.
Right.
But it's nice to see like low tide and beautiful foliage along
Right.
there, and
Well, one of the things you pointed out to me on our ride was the sand, like under the
Yeah.
water, where
Yeah.
it's coming out of the mouth of the river.
It's beautiful.
It's amazing
Yeah.
art. I
Some of
mean,
my
it's just
favorite
natural
pictures.
art. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it
mean,
really is, yeah.
that was a whole new appreciation, and I've seen the aerial pictures before of that stuff, and really didn't take it in as well as I did the day we went out, and.
Low tide, people. Low tide is the time to go.
Low tide is the time to go. So come see, and is it EagleEastAviation.com?
Yep. Yeah.
All right.
All one word. Yeah.
EagleEastAviation.com. Set up your scenic ride. Learn how to fly a plane.
It'd be the best thing you ever did.
Right. I mean, that's. I mean, I've been thinking about it since I went on that ride with you. I'm like, oh my God, I could fly a plane.
Yeah, and one thing that was taught to me is early on, and there's a couple of things that stick with you. Whereas, what's the two most important things in aviation? The next two things you have to do. And there's not many things in life where everything you do is it's your life depends on it.
Right.
And not that it's so scary, but the thing with flying is whether you're a private pilot or Joe Schmuck like me teaching people to fly, or
Right.
an airline pilot, aerodynamics is aerodynamics for him and for you.
Right.
And I was going for my instrument rating with this fellow. He called himself Captain Mikey, and I hated his guts, and because he was a nitpicker. But we became great friends, and he made me a mediocre to decent pilot. And he's well into his 80s now, and I send him emails all the time. Say, I fly with you every day, Captain Mikey. I fly with you every day, because
That's
something
awesome.
he taught me is always right here. And we were shooting an approach into Manchester one time when I was learning how to shoot approaches in bad weather, inclement weather, and I heard Southwest on the air, and I said, look at that guy, he's a real pilot. And he was furious at me.
Right.
He says, you understand that the only difference between you and him, he has more people sitting behind the seat. You're in the same weather. You're playing by the same rules. You're shooting the same approach as him.
Right.
And you only have one pilot on board.
Right.
He's got two.
Right.
So don't ever demean yourself, you know. So getting back to that is whether you're a private or an ATP, we all fly in the same environment. We have to know all the same rules and regulations. They have, you know, different systems, but whether you're flying for fun or not, you're flying in a professional environment, and you have to be professional. And that's what you find with people out here. Some of the best pilots I ever met don't fly for a living.
Right.
They take it seriously. So
that's great.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you again for being on the show.
You're welcome.
This will be up soon. And ladies and gentlemen, Tim Campbell, Eagle East Aviation.
Nice meeting you.
Have a good day. Here's the idea. People telling the stories that made them who they are today. If you want to tell yours, send an email to tellmystory@secretbackstory.com. That's the idea. What's your secret backstory?